What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
Hello, brave souls. Tonight we're doing part 3 of the Alaskan zombie incident. Chapter 6. Wilderness. The Alaskan wilderness stretched endlessly before them, a stark white canvas painted with the muted colors of the aurora borealis. Sarah, Yuki, and Alexei had been on the move for days, their enhanced bodies allowing them to cover distances that would have been impossible for normal humans. They paused atop a snow-covered ridge, scanning the horizon with their heightened senses. The wind carried no scent of pursuers, but they remained vigilant. Their transformation had continued, bringing with it new abilities and challenges. Sarah flexed her hands, watching as retracted claws extended from her fingertips. "We need to find shelter soon," she said, her voice carrying a slight growl. "Somewhere we can set up a lab and continue our research." Yuki nodded, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim Arctic light. "I've been thinking about that. There's an old Cold War-era research bunker about 50 miles north of here. If it's still intact, it might have the equipment we need." Alexei, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly tensed. "We're not alone," he whispered, dropping into a crouch. The others immediately followed suit. Their newly honed instincts kicked in. In the distance, barely visible against the snow, several figures moved with inhuman speed and grace. "More infected?" Yuki asked, her voice low. Sarah shook her head. "No, these are different. More like us." As if in response to her words, one of the figures let out a piercing howl that echoed across the frozen landscape. It was a sound that stirred something primal within them, a call they felt compelled to answer. "We can't avoid them forever," Alexei said, a hint of anticipation in his voice. "Maybe it's time we faced whatever we become." Sarah hesitated, torn between scientific curiosity and caution. But before she could decide, the decision was made for them. The figures were suddenly much closer, moving with impossible speed. In moments, they were surrounded. Sarah counted 6 of them, each bearing signs of the same transformations she and her companions had undergone. Their eyes glowed with bioluminescence, their bodies lithe and powerful beneath their tattered clothing. One of them, a tall woman with silvery hair, stepped forward when she spoke. Her voice was a mixture of growls and clicks that somehow formed coherent words. "You carry the scent of the origin, the place of awakening." Sarah straightened, meeting the woman's gaze. "We were there when it began. We're trying to understand what's happening to us, to find a way to control it." The woman tilted her head, considering. "Control? Why would you want to control evolution? We are becoming what we were always meant to be." Yuki stepped forward. "You seem to have a deeper understanding of these changes. How long have you been like this?" A low chuckle rippled through the group. The silver-haired woman grinned, revealing sharp, predatory teeth. "Time loses meaning when you transcend humanity. We are the first wave, the pioneers of a new era." Alexei's eyes narrowed. "The first wave? You mean there's more of you?" "Scattered, but growing." Another of the group, a muscular man with a scaled scalp, answered. "We felt your presence, your potential. You are like us, yet not incomplete." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Arctic cold. "What do you mean, incomplete?" The silver-haired woman moved closer, her movements liquid and predatory. "You cling to your old selves, your human limitations. We can help you embrace the change, become what you are meant to be." For a moment, Sarah felt the pull of that offer. Part of her yearned to let go, to fully embrace whatever she was becoming. The scientist in her, the part that still clung to humanity, resisted. "We can't abandon our research," she said firmly. "What's happening to us could be the key to saving humanity, not replacing it." The woman's expression hardened. Save humanity? Why save what is destined to fall? The old world is dying. We are the future. Tension crackled in the air. Sarah could sense her companions, conflicted emotions mirroring her own. The primal part of them was drawn to these evolved beings, but their human consciousness fought against it. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the standoff. The distant whir of a helicopter blades. Everyone tensed, recognizing the threat. The silver-haired woman snarled. The old world comes, bringing death. You must choose now. Join us. Embrace your true nature, or cling to your doomed humanity. Sarah exchanged glances with Yuki and Alexei. In that moment, she saw the same resolve in their eyes that she felt. They had come too far, learned too much to abandon their purpose now. We choose our own path, Sarah declared, her voice carrying a newfound strength. Neither fully human nor whatever you become. We'll find our own way. The woman's eyes flashed with anger and something like regret. Then you choose extinction, she growled. As the helicopters drew closer, chaos erupted. The evolved being melted into the landscape with incredible speed, leaving Sarah, Yuki, and Alexei alone on the ridge. Run! Sarah shouted. And they took off, their enhanced bodies carrying them swiftly across the snow. As they fled, Sarah's mind raced. They were caught between two worlds now, hunted by humans who feared them and rejected by those who had fully embraced the change. Their path forward was more uncertain than ever. But one thing was clear. The answers they sought lay not in choosing sides, but in forging their own destiny. The bunker Yuki had mentioned now seemed like their only hope. With renewed determination, they pushed on into the gathering storm, the sound of helicopters fading behind them as they vanished into the Alaskan wilderness. Chapter 7. The Bunker. The old Cold War bunker loomed before them, a concrete monolith half buried in snow and ice. After days of grueling travel, dodging both human patrols and packs of the fully transformed, Sarah, Yuki, and Alexei had finally reached their destination. Let's hope this place is as abandoned as it looks, Alexei muttered, his enhanced senses scanning for any signs of life or danger. Sarah approached the heavy steel door, her claws extending instinctively. With strength that still surprised her, she pried the frozen door open, metal groaning in protest. The interior was dark and musty, the air thick with decades of disuse. As they entered, their bioluminescent eyes adjusted quickly, revealing a space frozen in time. Old computer terminals, their screens dark and cracked, lined the walls. Dust-covered filing cabinets stood like silent sentinels. This is perfect, Yuki breathed, already moving towards what appeared to be a laboratory area. If we can get some of this equipment working, we might actually have a chance at understanding what's happening to us. As they explored further, they discovered that the bunker was more extensive than they'd initially thought. Living quarters, storage areas, and even a small medical bay branched off from the main room. We should be safe here, at least for a while, Sarah said, her voice echoing silently in the cavernous space. Let's get to work. Over the next few days, they fell into a rhythm. Yuki focused on repairing and upgrading the old equipment, her enhanced dexterity making the delicate work easier. Alexei took charge of security, rigging up an early warning system using parts salvaged from their journey. Sarah divided her time between analyzing their blood samples and poring over the old research files they'd found in the bunker. It was during one of these late-night research sessions that Sarah made a breakthrough. I think I found something, she called out, her excitement palpable. Yuki and Alexei hurried over, crowding around the flickering computer screen. Look at this. Sarah pointed to a series of complex genetic sequences. The virus isn't just activating dormant genes, it's creating entirely new ones. It's as if it's using our DNA as a blueprint to build something more. Alexei frowned, his elongated pupils contracting as he studied the data. More what, exactly? I'm not sure, Sarah admitted. But whatever it is, it's changing us on a fundamental level. We're not just evolving. We're being redesigned. Yuki's eyes widened as she processed the implications. But to what end? And why are we different from the others we've encountered? Before Sarah could respond, a shrill alarm cut through the air. Alexei was on his feet in an instant, moving with preternatural speed to the security station he'd set up. We've got company, he growled, bringing up a grainy feed from cameras he'd positioned outside. Multiple contacts approaching from the north. Sarah and Yuki joined him, peering at the screen. Through the swirling snow, they could make out several figures moving with the fluid grace they'd come to associate with the fully transformed. "It's them," Sarah whispered. "They found us." As they watched, more figures emerge from the storm, but these moved differently, jerkier, more aggressive. "Infected. And they're not alone," Alexei added grimly. The two groups clashed in a frenzy of claws and teeth, their inhuman shrieks carrying even through the bunker's thick walls. But amid the chaos, a new sound emerged. The rhythmic thump of helicopter blades. "Three-way battle," Yuki said, her voice tight. "The military's joined the party." Sarah's mind raced, weighing their options. They couldn't stay here. It was only a matter of time before one side or another breached the bunker, but leaving meant abandoning their research, possibly their only chance at finding a solution. As if reading her thoughts, Alexei spoke up. "We need to go now, but not empty-handed." With practiced efficiency, they began gathering their most crucial research materials and equipment. Sarah hesitated over the old files she'd been studying, then made a split-second decision to take them too. Something told her they might hold more answers than she realized. Just as they finished packing, a massive explosion rocked the bunker. Dust and debris rained down as a crack spider-webbed across the ceiling. "They breached the outer defenses," Alexei shouted over the din. "We're out of time." They raced to the emergency exit, a narrow tunnel leading away from the main bunker. As they ran, Sarah could hear the sounds of combat growing closer, gunfire mixed with animalistic roars and the screech of tearing metal. They emerged into the howling Arctic night, the storm providing cover as they fled into the wilderness. Behind them, the bunker erupted in a fireball, decades of secret consumed in an instant. As they put distance between themselves and the battle, Sarah felt a mix of emotions churning within her. They'd lost their sanctuary, but the research they'd managed to save might be the key to understanding their transformation, and possibly the fate of humanity itself. "Where do we go now?" Yuki asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. Sarah looked at her companions, seeing her own determination reflected in their glowing eyes. "We find answers," she said firmly, "and then we decide the future. Not just for us, but for everyone." As they pressed on into the storm, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were moving towards something monumental. Whether it was salvation or damnation remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, there was no going back to what they once were. The next phase of their journey, and perhaps of human evolution itself, had begun. Chapter 8. Convergence. Days blended into weeks as Sarah, Yuki, and Alexei trekked through the unforgiving Alaskan wilderness. Their enhanced bodies allowed them to cover vast distances, but the constant threat of discovery kept them on edge. They moved mostly at night, their bioluminescent eyes piercing the darkness, always alert for signs of pursuit. One evening, as they set up camp in the shelter of a rocky outcropping, Sarah noticed something odd about her hand. The scales that had begun to form weeks ago were spreading, creating intricate patterns across her skin. "It's accelerating," she murmured, studying the changes. Yuki looked up from the portable lab equipment she was setting up. "The transformation? I've noticed it too. Our cellular structure is becoming more fluid, for lack of a better term." Alexei, who had been keeping watch, joined the conversation. "It's not just physical. I can sense things, intentions, emotions. It's like we're developing a new kind of awareness." Sarah nodded, having experienced similar sensations. "We need to understand what's happening to us, and fast. The military, the infected, the evolved, they're all converging. I can feel it." As if on cue, a distant howl echoed across the landscape. It was answered by another, closer this time. "They're hunting us," Alexei growled, his pupils contracting into slits. Sarah made a quick decision. "Pack up, we need to move." As they hastily gathered their equipment, a new sound cut through the night. The rhythmic thump of helicopter blades. "Damn it," Yuki hissed. "How do they find us?" There was no time to speculate. They took off into the night, their enhanced speed and agility allowing them to navigate the treacherous terrain with ease, but their pursuers were relentless. As they crested a hill, Sarah suddenly stumbled, a searing pain lancing through her head. Visions flashed before her eyes. An underground laboratory, rows of stasis pods, and a familiar face that made her blood run cold. "Sarah!" Yuki's voice snapped her back to reality. What's wrong? Sarah shook her head, trying to clear the lingering images. I saw something. A place. And Dr. Marcus Emerson. Alexi's eyes widened in recognition. The lead research from the original station? We thought he was dead. He's alive, Sarah said grimly, and I think I know where he is. Before she could elaborate, a spotlight cut through the darkness, illuminating them in harsh white light. The helicopter had found them. Run! Alexi shouted, but it was too late. Nets launched from the helicopter, weighted and electrified. Sarah felt a jolt of pain as one enveloped her, sending her crashing to the ground. Through blurred vision, she saw Yuki and Alexi similarly entangled. As armed figures rappelled down from the helicopter, Sarah struggled against the net. To her surprise, the scales on her skin began to shift and harden, forming a kind of natural armor. With a surge of strength, she tore through the electrified mesh. Nearby, Alexi had managed to slice through his net with extended claws. He moved with blinding speed, disarming 2 soldiers before they could react. Yuki, her transformation taking a different path, seemed to phase through her restraints, her body momentarily becoming translucent. The soldiers, clearly unprepared for the extent of their mutations, fell back in disarray. But more were coming, and in the distance, Sarah could hear the howls of the evolved growing closer. We can't fight them all, she shouted over the chaos. We need to split up. It went against every instinct, but they knew it was their only chance. With quick, fierce embraces, they separated, each heading in a different direction. As Sarah ran, pushing her mutated body to the limits, her mind raced. The vision she'd had, the glimpses of Dr. Emerson, it had to be connected to their transformation. She had a feeling that finding him might be the key to understanding what was happening to them and possibly to stopping it. But first, she had to survive. The sounds of pursuit faded as she put distance between herself and the landing site. As she ran, she felt her body continuing to change, adapting to the stress and danger. Her senses sharpened even further, and she could swear she felt the very pulse of the earth beneath her feet. Sarah didn't know where this transformation would lead, or if she'd ever see Yuki and Alexi again, but she clung to one certainty. The answer she sought lay with Dr. Emerson. Somehow, she would find that underground lab, and when she did, she'd finally uncover the truth behind their evolution. As the aurora borealis danced overhead, Sarah pressed on into the unknown, her glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. The hunt was on, but this time, she was the hunter. Chapter 9. Convergence continued. Sarah crouched at the edge of snow-covered ridge, her transformed body nearly invisible against the stark landscape. Weeks had passed since she'd been separated from Yuki and Alexi, and in that time, her mutations had progressed rapidly. Her skin was now almost entirely covered in iridescent scales that shifted color to match her surroundings, and her senses had sharpened to an almost painful degree. Below her, nestled in a narrow valley, sat a nondescript research facility, the place she'd seen in her vision. Getting here hadn't been easy. She had to evade military patrols, packs of the evolved, and roving bands of the infected. But the pull of this place, and the answers it might hold, had been irresistible. As she studied the facility's defenses, a familiar scent caught her attention. Sarah's head snapped up, her pupils dilated as she scanned the area. There, approaching from the east, were 2 figures moving with fluid grace she recognized all too well. Yuki, Alexi. She breathed a mix of relief and apprehension washing over her. They converged on her position, and Sarah was struck by how much they had changed. Yuki's skin has taken on a translucent quality, with faint bioluminescent patterns pulsing beneath the surface. Alexi had become more muscular, with retractable claws and what looked like armor plates along his spine. No words were needed as they reunited. Their evolved senses allowed them to communicate through a mix of subtle gestures, pheromones, and what could only be described as a type of telepathy. You felt it too, Sarah said, not really a question. Alexi nodded. The pull. It's getting stronger. Something big is happening here, Yuki added, her eyes fixed on the facility. I can sense fluctuations, energy patterns I've never encountered before. Sarah filled them in on her vision of Dr. Emerson in the underground lab. As she spoke, she could feel their shared resolve solidifying whatever was happening in that facility. It was tied to their transformation, and possibly the fate of humanity itself. We need a plan, Alexei said, his enhanced vision picking out details of the facility's security measures. Sarah nodded. I've been watching their patterns. There's a blind spot in the sensor grid every 37 minutes. If we time it right, we can... She broke off suddenly, her head tilting as she caught a new sound in the wind. Yuki and Alexei tensed, having heard it too. Helicopters, Yuki whispered. At least 3, coming in fast. And something else, Alexei growled, his nostrils flaring. That scent. Sarah felt it too, a primal, almost overwhelming presence approaching rapidly from the north. The Evolved, a whole pack of them. They exchanged grim looks, realizing the implications. Every faction in this biological arms race was converging on this one point. Whatever secrets the facility held, they weren't the only ones after them. We're out of time, Sarah said, her voice taking on a commanding tone that surprised even her. We go now, but we might not ever get another chance. Without further discussion, they moved as one, their mutated bodies allowing them to cover the distance to the facility with incredible speed. As they approached the perimeter, alarms began to blare. Their presence had been detected, blind spot or not. Gunfire erupted from the guard towers, but they were ready. Yuki's body seemed to shimmer, the bullets passing harmlessly through her translucent form. Alexei's armored plates deflected shots as he barreled through a security checkpoint. Sarah used her chameleon-like camouflage to slip past defenses, taking out key systems with her precisely aimed strikes. They fought their way inside as chaos erupted around the facility. Military helicopters engaged with airborne evolved beings in a deadly aerial dance. On the ground, waves of infected clashed with security forces, their inhuman shrieks filling the air. Inside, the 3 made their way deeper into the complex, following Sarah's instincts and the pull that they felt. They encountered pockets of resistance, guards and scientists alike, but their enhanced abilities made short work of any opposition. Finally, they reached a heavily reinforced door marked Restricted Area, Project Prometheus. This is it, Sarah said, her heart racing with anticipation. Alexei stepped forward, his claws extending. With a series of swift, powerful strikes, he tore through the reinforced metal like it was paper. As the door fell away, they stepped into a vast underground chamber filled with rows of glowing stasis pods. And there, standing calmly in the center of it all, was Dr. Marcus Emerson. Welcome, he said, a serene smile on his face. I've been expecting you. Sarah, Yuki, and Alexei spread out, their enhanced senses on high alert for any threat. But Emerson made no hostile moves. Instead, he gestured to the pods around them. Beautiful, aren't they? The next stage of human evolution, carefully cultivated and controlled. Unlike your spontaneous adaptations. What have you done, Marcus? Sarah demanded, her voice a low growl. Emerson's smile widened. My dear Sarah, I've done what any good scientist would do. I've ensured the survival of our species. The virus you encountered? It was just the beginning. Here, we refined it, perfected it. As he spoke, the pods began to open with a hydraulic hiss. From each one emerged a figure, human in basic shape, but clearly altered in significant ways. You see, Emerson continued, the random mutations out there are just that, random, chaotic. Here, we're guiding evolution, creating the perfect adaptations for a changing world. Yuki stepped forward, her translucent skin pulsing with agitation. You're playing God. I'm saving humanity, Emerson countered. And now that you're here, we can complete the process. Your unique mutations, combined with our research, imagine the possibilities. Outside, the sound of the battles grew louder. The facility shook with distant explosions. You don't have much time to decide, Emerson said, his tone hardening. Join us. Help us perfect the next stage of human evolution. Or, he left the threat unspoken, but the meaning was clear. Around them, the engineered evolved began to move, their intent unmistakable. Sarah, Yuki, and Alexei exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. In that moment, they faced not just a physical threat, but an existential choice, one that could determine the future of their species. As alarms blared and the facility trembled around them, Sarah stepped forward, her decision made. The true battle for humanity's future was about to begin. Chapter 10. Crucible. The underground chamber trembled with another distant explosion as Sarah faced Dr. Emerson, her transformed body coiled with tension. Beside her, Yuki and Alexei stood ready, their mutations pulsing with barely contained energy. "You're insane, Marcus," Sarah growled, her voice carrying otherworldly resonance. "You can't control evolution. You're going to destroy everything." Emerson's calm demeanor slipped from a moment, revealing a flash of fanatical zeal. "Destroy? I'm saving us. The world is changing, Sarah. Climate collapse, resource wars, pandemics. Humanity as we know it is doomed. This," he gestured to the engineered evolved surrounding them, "is our only hope for survival." As if to punctuate his words, the facility shook violently, alarms blaring with increased urgency. Yuki's translucent form shimmered with agitation. "Your controlled subjects won't save anyone. They're as much a threat as the infected outside." "You don't understand," Emerson insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "We're on the cusp of a breakthrough. With your unique mutations, we can perfect the process. Create beings adapted to any environment, any challenge." Alexei snarled, his armor plates shifting. "At what cost? Our humanity?" Before Emerson could respond, the reinforced doors to the chamber burst inward. A wave of infected poured through, their mutated forms a horrifying contrast to the sleek, engineered evolved. Close behind them came another group, the fully transformed beings they'd encountered in the wilderness. Chaos erupted as the various factions clashed. Emerson's engineered evolved moved precision, but they were outnumbered. The infected attacked with mindless ferocity, while the wilderness evolved fought with their cunning and raw power. Sarah, Yuki, and Alexei found themselves at the center of the storm. Their unique mutations allowed them to hold their own, but the sheer number of combatants was overwhelming. As they fought, Sarah noticed something strange. The longer the battle raged, the more her body seemed to adapt. She could feel her DNA shifting, incorporating traits from around her. A glance at her companions confirmed they were experiencing the same phenomenon. Across the chamber, she saw Emerson frantically working at a control panel. With horror, she realized he was initiating some kind of fail-safe protocol. "He's going to release everything," she shouted to her companions. "All of his experiments, all at once." They fought their way towards Emerson, but it was too late. Pods throughout the chamber began to open, releasing a dizzying array of mutated beings. Some were clearly failed experience, writhing in agony. Others were terrifying effective killing machines. As the new combatants joined the fray, Sarah, Yuki, and Alexei found themselves backed into a corner. The battle had become a crucible of evolution, with only the most adaptable surviving the moment to moment. Suddenly, Sarah felt a surge of energy unlike anything she'd experienced before. Her body began to change rapidly, incorporating the most effective traits from every being in the chamber. She could sense Yuki and Alexei undergoing similar transformations. In that moment of metamorphosis, a strange clarity came over Sarah. She could see the strands of DNA swirling around them, the potential futures branching out in infinite directions, and she understood what needed to be done. With a thought, she reached out to Yuki and Alexei, their minds linking in a way that transcended their physical forms. Together, they began to exert control over the chaotic evolution happening around them. Infected began to regain their sanity. The wilderness evolved felt the pull towards a more balanced form. Even Emerson's engineered subjects started to change, shedding their artificial constraints. Emerson watched in awe and terror as his life's work unraveled before him. "What are you doing?" he screamed over the din. Sarah turned to him, her form now a stunning synthesis of human and evolved traits. "What you couldn't, Marcus. We're guiding evolution, but not controlling it. We're finding balance." As the transformations spread throughout the chamber, the fighting gradually ceased. The various factions, once so distinct, began to merge into a new, unified form of life. The facility gave one final, massive shudder. Alexei, his senses now vastly enhanced, called out, "The whole place is coming down. We need to get out of here." Sarah nodded, reaching out with her newfound abilities to coordinate their escape. As one, the newly evolved beings moved towards the exit, leaving behind the ruins of Emerson's grand experiment. They emerged into the Arctic night to find the world in chaos. The military forces had been overwhelmed, their weapons useless against the tide of evolution. But now, guided by Sarah, Yuki, and Alexei. That tide was turning into something new. Something with the potential to bridge the gap between what humanity had been and what it needed to become. As they stood on the precipice of a new era, Sarah looked at her companions. They were no longer just scientists or even merely evolved beings. They had become something more, guardians of a new form of life, shepherds of humanity's next great leap. What now? Yuki asked, her voice resonating with newfound power and responsibility. Sarah gazed out at the aurora-lit horizon, feeling the pulse of the changed world around them. Now, she said, we guide. We teach. We help humanity evolve not just to survive, but to thrive in the world we've inherited. As if in response to her words, the first rays of dawn broke over the Arctic landscape. It was, Sarah realized, the first sunrise of a new age. An age of uncertainty, yes, but also one of incredible potential. Together, they stepped forward into the light, ready to face whatever challenges this brave new world might bring. I just wanted to say thank you for listening. Come back next time for some more scary stories. And as always, remember to face your fears.